The shogi board. There's a quiet scene in Naruto that most people overlook. Shikamaru is sitting across the table from Asuma Sarutobi, playing a game of shogi. Now, if you've never seen shogi before, think of it like Japanese chess. Every piece has a role, every move changes the entire board. And Shikamaru, he's already showing something special. He's not just reacting to what's happening on the board, he's thinking ahead. 3 moves, 5 moves, sometimes 10 moves ahead. And Asuma notices it. He looks at Shikamaru and realizes something. This kid isn't just smart, he's a strategist. But the interesting part of that scene isn't the game, it's the conversation happening around it. Because Asuma asks Shikamaru something important. He asks him if he's ever thought about becoming a leader someday, maybe even Hokage. And Shikamaru immediately pushes back. He says that sounds like way too much responsibility, too much work, too troublesome. And if you know Shikamaru, that response makes perfect sense because most of his life, Shikamaru avoids responsibility. Not because he's incapable, but because he understands something most people don't realize until much later in life. Responsibility in leadership is heavy. Caring about people means eventually facing loss, and that's something Shikamaru doesn't fully understand yet. But life has a way of teaching lessons whether we're ready for it or not. Because later on in the story, that same mentor sitting across the shogi board from him won't be there anymore. And when that happens, Shikamaru's entire understanding of life begins to change. Mentor, Shadow, and the Will of Fire. Before Shikamaru became a strategist of legend, he had a teacher who saw him. Asuma Sarutobi wasn't just a jonin. He wasn't just someone who gave orders. He was a guide, a mentor, who understood how to draw potential without forcing it. Shikamaru learned more from Asuma than just shadow techniques. He learned patience, how to wait for the right move. He learned trust, how to rely on someone without losing himself. And he learned responsibility, how to carry the weight of others while still thinking for himself. The two of them would sit quietly sometimes in the field on missions or even during downtime. Shikamaru would strategize, Asuma would challenge him. Sometimes he let Shikamaru lose on purpose, letting him understand that every decision has a consequence without breaking him. Every mission became a lesson in the Will of Fire. The idea that protecting your people isn't just about power, it's about care, foresight, leading with your heart as much as your head. Here's the personal layer for me. My mom did the same. She wasn't loud about lessons. She taught through presence, through challenges, through quiet guidance. She showed me responsibility without forcing it. She showed me trust without demanding it. And she showed me patience without preaching it. And it shaped the moves I make every day. Ask yourself, who has shaped the way that you think, lead, or move through life? Who's teaching you lessons without realizing it? And are you paying attention enough to carry those lessons forward? Mentorship isn't about perfection. It's about inspiration. It's about the next move. Shikamaru didn't just gain a teacher. He gained a blueprint, a shadow to guide his moves, a mirror to reflect his potential. Lessons in imperfection, growing through the shadows. Mentors, they're not perfect. Neither are parents. Neither are we. Shikamaru didn't just learn techniques from Asuma. He also learned what not to do. The mistakes, the missteps, the ways decisions could go wrong. And he carried those lessons forward. Not to repeat them, not to dwell on them, but to grow beyond them. I've seen this in my own life. My mom wasn't flawless. She had struggles, frustrations, moments where she wasn't at her best. But I learned from all of it. I learned resilience from her impatience. I learned discipline from her habits, even ones I didn't agree with. I learned how to correct the wrongs inherited while honoring the right. Growth, responsibility, mentorship, they're not just about the things modeled correctly. They're about observing, reflecting, and applying lessons consciously. About stepping into the next move even when the path is unclear. Ask yourself, which lesson in your life came from imperfection? Which examples are you correcting today to build something better for yourself, your family, or your team? Shikamaru didn't just mimic what Asuma did, he adapted it, he applied it. He made moves that reflected wisdom and integrity, even when the model was flawed. Your life works the same way. The people who shaped you left shadows, both light and dark. Your job is to move through them wisely. I've always got your back. Mentorship isn't just about teaching skills. Sometimes it's being there in ways you don't even realize until years later. Shikamaru Nara knew this with Asuma Sarutobi. Asuma didn't rely on grand speeches or constant praise. What he offered was something far more powerful. Consistency, presence, quiet protection. On missions and battles and moments where Shikamaru doubted himself, Asuma was there, watching, guiding, letting Shikamaru stumble when he needed to learn, but always ready to step in before a mistake turned into disaster. He gave Shikamaru space to think, space to grow, space to fail. Because the best mentors understand something important. The lessons that last the longest are the ones you discover yourself. Sometimes Asuma's support showed up in subtle ways. A shadow blocking an attack at the last second. A warning whispered at the right moment. A hand on the shoulder that said everything without saying much at all. I've got you. And when I think about that kind of support, I realize I experienced something similar in my own life. Years ago, I got kicked out of the military. And on the drive home, my mind was doing exactly what Shikamaru's shadow possession does. Running through a million different scenarios. How was I going to tell my parents? What would they say? Maybe they say I disappointed them. Maybe they say I failed. Maybe they say I threw away my entire future. My mind played out every possible outcome. But when I finally told my mom, her response caught me completely off guard. She looked at me and said something I'll never forget. Son, keep your head up. Everything will be okay. I've got your back. Then she said something that changed the way I look at life. All you really need in life is one person who cares about you as much as I do. Come on home, and we'll figure it out together. And in that moment, I understood something powerful. Sometimes the greatest gift someone can give you isn't advice, it's belief. The quiet reassurance that no matter how messy life gets, you're not facing it alone. That kind of support changes the way you move through the world. Just like Asuma's belief gave Shikamaru the confidence to become the strategist he would one day become. My mom's belief in me gave me the strength to keep moving forward. And when someone truly has your back, you don't just survive. You start believing in your next move. So ask yourself, who has quietly had your back in life? Who believed in you when your own mind was running through the worst case scenarios? And how might your life change if you carry that same kind of belief forward for someone else? Because the strongest mentors, the strongest parents, the strongest leaders don't just teach you how to move. They remind you that you're strong enough to make the move. When the mentor falls. There's a moment in Naruto where Shikamaru's entire world changes. His mentor, Asuma Sarutobi, dies. And if you watch the arc closely, something important happens. Shikamaru doesn't explode with rage like Naruto would. He doesn't scream, he doesn't run off blindly looking for revenge. He gets quiet. Because when someone important dies, the mind doesn't always react with anger. Sometimes it reacts with silence, disbelief, with a strange feeling like the world is still moving, but something inside of you just stopped. And when I watched that part of Naruto again as an adult, I understood it differently because I felt that silence before. When my mom was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer, everything changed almost overnight. One day she was there, the next day we were told she had about 3 months to live. 3 months. That number changes the way you see time. Suddenly every conversation matters, every moment matters, and just like Shikamaru was sitting there processing the loss of his mentor, I remember sitting there realizing life was about to change forever. The weight of care. In the episodes after Asuma's death, Shikamaru withdraws. He stops playing shogi, he stops engaging with people. He just sits there, staring, trying to process what just happened. Because grief doesn't just hurt, it exhausts you. And during my mom's last months, I learned something similar. My mom chose hospice at home. So those last weeks, I was there. I gave her shots, I cleaned her wounds, I helped her eat when she was hungry, I brought her something to drink when she was thirsty. I slept during the day so I could stay up through the night because I didn't want her to pass away alone. And those nights were quiet. Sometimes it was just the two of us sitting in the room. Sometimes we talked, sometimes we didn't. But every moment carried this quiet weight. And when I watched Shikamaru sitting there after Asuma's death, staring at the board, staring at the sky, I recognized that look. That's the look of someone trying to figure out how life continues after loss. There's a scene that captures this perfectly. Shikamaru sits down with his father, Shikamaru Nara, and they begin playing shogi. At first, he's calm. Then the grief breaks through. He flips the board, he yells, he cries. Everything he had been holding in finally comes out. And his father doesn't stop him. He lets him rage. He lets him cry. He lets him break. Then after Shikamaru finally calms down, his father tells him something powerful. Asuma trusted you with the next move. And that's the truth grief eventually brings us to. Living after the person who shaped you is gone, the moment when life quietly looks at you and says, your turn. For Shikamaru, that meant carrying forward the lessons Asuma left behind. And for many of us, It means carrying forward the lessons the people we love gave us while they were still here. The last breath. The day my mom passed away, I was in the room with her. But there's a moment before that day that I still think about often. Not long before she passed, I hugged her. And as I held her, I could feel the tears starting to build in my eyes. She looked at me the way she always did, direct, strong, honest. And she asked me something I didn't expect. What are you crying for? Then she said something I will carry with me for the rest of my life. I've lived a full life. I raised 2 wonderful sons. I've gotten more out of life than most people could dream. That was my mom. Even in the face of the end, she was still strong, still focused, still grateful, still thinking about the life she lived instead of the life she was leaving behind. And when the day finally came, I was there. I watched her take her last breath, and in that moment, something very strange happened. There was a sudden rush of air that moved through the room. The window blinds slammed against the glass, and for a second, everything went completely still. It felt like her soul had just left the room. If you've ever been present when someone passes away, you know that silence. It's a silence that changes you. And when I think about Shikamaru standing at Asuma's grave, I imagine something very similar happening inside of him. The realization that someone who shaped your life is gone. And somehow, the world still expects you to keep moving forward. The cigarette and the choice. There's a scene after Shikamaru defeats Hidan that hits differently when you've experienced loss. After everything is over, he lights a cigarette. Now, if you know Naruto, that cigarette belonged to Asuma. It was his habit, his signature. And when Shikamaru lights it, that moment isn't about smoking. It's about grief. It's about memory. It's about carrying someone forward. And that moment hit me in a very personal way because my mom smoked her entire life. After she passed, there were days when the grief hit so hard I didn't know how to process it. Some days I would cry. Some days I would call her voicemail just to hear her voice. I talked to her like she was still there, tell her when things were going well, tell her when things were going bad. And there were days I lit a cigarette too, partially in remembrance, partially in grief. Now the truth is, smoking may have contributed to the cancer, but grief doesn't always behave logically. Sometimes it's just searching for connection, and eventually I realized something important. The same thing Shikamaru realizes after losing Asuma. You can't live your life trapped in the past, and you can't live your life trapped in fear of the future either. Because if you live too far ahead in your mind, you're living in anxiety. And if you live too far behind in your mind, you're living in depression. The only place you can actually change your life is in the present moment. And that's where Shikamaru eventually learns to stand. Not in the past, not in revenge, not in responsibility, carrying the people we've lost forward through the way that we live, presently. Grief, clouds, and the temporary board. There's a lesson in the sky if you know how to look. Shikamaru sits alone. The clouds drift slowly above Konoha. They don't hurry, they don't pause, they just move. Shikamaru's shadow stretches across the empty streets, following him like the reminders of things we can't change. There's a Japanese concept called mano no awari, the beauty of impermanence. It's the awareness that everything in life is temporary. Clouds, seasons, battles, victories, losses, the people we love. Shikamaru learned it after Asuma's death. He didn't push the grief away. He watched it. He let it sit, heavy and quiet, while the world carried on. The sky changed, the shadows lengthened, life demanded a next move. And there's a truth in the tension. Grief doesn't have to stop action, it can sharpen it. When you accept impermanence, the small things become monumental. A cloud breaking just right over the village, a single move in shogi reflecting the lessons of the past, a shadow stretching perfectly across the street. Mano no awari doesn't make loss less painful, it makes it present, more vivid. It makes the moment matter because it will never come again. Your reflection. Where can you sit, observe, and honor what's fleeting in your life without freezing yourself in fear or sadness? What would it feel like to fully inhabit the moment even when it hurts? Grief is heavy, loss is permanent in memory, but life moves forward. The clouds drift, the shadows stretch, the board is still set, and you, like Shikamaru, must make your next move, aware, deliberate, and present. Watching the clouds. Shikamaru has a ritual. He sits, stares at the sky, and watches the clouds drift by. It's simple, but yet profound. He's not planning, he's not calculating, he's not trying to control what comes next. He's just present. And there's a lesson in that. Life doesn't wait. The people we love don't wait. The laughter, the small victories, the fleeting moments, if you're not tuned in, they'll pass you by. Think about your own life. How long has it been since you checked in with someone you care about? Someone who matters, someone whose absence leaves a shadow in your mind. A friend, a parent, a sibling, a mentor, someone you let go too long without connection. Shikamaru knows the impermanence of everything. The clouds are always moving, seasons change, people leave. But instead of freezing in fear, he pauses to appreciate the moment while it's here. This is your cue. Call that friend, send that message, laugh with your family. Sit quietly, let the grief or stress exist, and notice the beauty around you. It doesn't have to be grand, it doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be intentional. Because the truth is, we cannot get these moments back. We can't rewind laughter, we can't extend the life of someone we lost, we can't predict the time we have with those who we care about. But we can choose to be present now. Shikamaru looks at the clouds, he knows tomorrow is never guaranteed, but today is still here. The challenge is simple. Stop rushing, look up, breathe, connect, notice, appreciate, and let the impermanence sharpen you instead of paralyze you. Talk No Jutsu Challenge. All right, this is where we train. This is where the lesson leaves the anime and lands in your life. Shikamaru didn't just sit in grief, he felt it, he observed it, and then he moved despite of it. He let impermanence of life sharpen him, not paralyze him. Your challenge today is to do the same. Number 1, identify the weight. Write it down. One loss, one moment of grief, or one shadow from your past that still lingers. Name it. Don't shy away from it. Be honest. 2, observe. Like Shikamaru. Take 5 minutes a day to sit somewhere quiet. Watch the clouds. Watch your shadows. Watch your mind. Notice the impermanence of the moment. Let the grief exist without running, without distracting, without fixing it. 3, find the next move. Ask yourself, given what I've lost, what is my next move? It could be an action toward a goal, reaching out to someone you care about, or a small step forward in healing. 4, act deliberately. Take that one step today, not 10, not 50, just 1. Focus your energy on it. Fully avoid overthinking. Shadow possession works when used outward, not inward. The same goes for your energy. And 5, honor the process afterward. Reflect, write down how it felt to sit in impermanence, to move despite of grief, and to take ownership of your energy. Key takeaways. Grief doesn't disappear. Loss doesn't vanish, but your presence, your awareness, and your next move, that's what shapes the story from here. You're not frozen in shadows. You're not stuck in the clouds. You're making the move your loved one would have trusted you to make. The next move. If you think back to the beginning of the story, it started with a quiet game of shogi. Shikamaru sitting across from Asuma, learning, thinking, trying to avoid responsibility. But life changed that. Loss changed that. Because when Asuma died, Shikamaru didn't just lose a teacher. He lost the person who believed in him, the person who saw the leader that he could become. And in many ways, grief does something strange. It forces us to grow into spaces people leave behind. The same way Shikamaru eventually steps forward to help guide the hidden leaf. The same way many of us step forward in our own lives after losing someone we love. For me, that person was my mom. There were days after she passed where I didn't know if I would ever feel normal again. Days where grief felt like it would swallow everything. But slowly, something changes. We start realizing that the people we lose don't completely disappear. They live on in the choices we make, in the lessons that gave us, in the strength they built inside of us. And suddenly, life starts to look a little bit like a shogi board again. You don't need to know every move. You don't need to predict the entire future. You just need to focus on the move in front of you. Because the present moment is the only place where life actually happens. So whatever move life has placed in front of you, right now, make it count.